Welcome back. You're still watching Business Morning on Channels Television, and today we're focusing on decisions that were actually taken by the Monetary Policy Committee meeting in Abuja yesterday. And I have here with me the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company Limited, Bismarck Rouhani. Thank you so much, Bismarck, for sticking around. Well, we've been talking so much about liquidity and illiquidity in the market right now. We're having so much pressure. But then we also know that yesterday, or there have been stories and issues about failure of discount houses. And we know that with the challenge of liquidity in the system, the central bank has had to close down like 2 or so of these discount houses. How is this going to affect the markets in the short term?
No, the central bank governor announced yesterday that it had revoked, and in fact, revoked the license of Express Discount House due to some systemic problems they had within that company. There was also allegations of fraud at the Consolidated Discount House. He did say that the 2 other discount houses, that is Kakawa, which is owned principally by First Bank, GT Bank, and FCMB, was in very good shape, good financial condition. He also said that Associated Discount House, which is owned by Access and Access Bank, main shareholder, is in good financial condition. The Consolidated Discount House is under investigation for some misreporting, and Express Discount House has had his license revoked. But he did say something that all non-bank depositors in these institutions will be paid in full. So there's no systemic risk as such, okay? But it is disturbing that financial institutions that have had this kind of history over the years, which were owned by the banks themselves, could come into this situation. So I wouldn't say that it is the CRR that caused it. There was a fundamental problem, but the CRR increase actually precipitated the symptoms, blown out to the open. It would have come in any case. It was like the Nigerian banking system before Sanusi intervened. Okay. It was fostering, or the better word for it. However, the moment Sanusi, when they now carried out a stress test, or what they call a detailed audit, they now found that these banks were in grave condition, and then it actually spurred an intervention. So the discount house industry is a small industry compared to the banking system. But it is significant because the discount house industry is an intermediary between the banks and the central bank in the old system, and actually they are, if any set of institutions know how to manage the balance sheet and manage the treasury well, is the discount house industry. So for there to be a failure in one of the 4, and the other one is under investigation, calls into question the quality of the management of those particular discount houses and their leadership.
So we'll probably be seeing the central bank take some form of action like it did with the banks in...
No, they've actually taken action already, and they've actually insulated the problem, and so that it doesn't spread. So there's no question of malignance of that problem.
Now, the committee also, at its last meeting in July, let's just go back a bit, made reference to the risk of capital flow reversals. What's this about, and how much of a risk is it?
Yeah, that's a major problem. The capital, what you have is that there's what we call hot money. Hot money is money that comes into a system in search of higher returns than the global markets will offer. So when Nigerian bonds and fixed income securities were offering coupon rates of 14, 15% per annum, and inflation rate was maybe 10, 11, and the euro market was offering 0.5, 1%, there was a big advantage in coming into Nigeria. Now, the problem with hot money is that hot money depends on not just interest rates, it depends on political stability, the level of risk in an environment, and all of that. Now, what has happened is that it is now clear that if not now, but sooner than we expect, maybe next year, the interest rate regime in the United States and in Europe is going to be increasing. So the difference between interest rates in the advanced market and Nigeria is bound to shrink. What has happened, therefore, is that monies that were coming in have slowed, and monies that are in are tend to go out. And what have they done? Some of them in the stock market are selling those stocks off, taking advantage of the exchange rate because of the fear that at the time they want to take the money out, maybe next year, the naira could have devalued. They're also afraid that next year, the central bank governor has said, I am not going to continue.
Okay.
And we don't know who and what kind of caliber of persons will become the next governor of the central bank. So what is clear is that the devil you know, or not the devil you know, the incumbent is known to be a capable economist, a very strong character, and believes strongly in what he believes, and has done a good job. Now, between now and that time, some people are taking a position that, okay, fine, why don't I go short and start moving money out? So, a couple of things. One, the relative interest rates have declined. Two, the political environment is quite heated. And thirdly, the leadership of the central bank is bound to change, in which case, all of these things point to the fact that those fixed income investors are now beginning to say, well, what do we do? You begin to just err on the side of caution. Not take everything out, but take a little bit out. And that little bit out by everybody is becoming, what I say, the crumbs are becoming lumps. And that's why you're seeing.
But we have a lot of foreign direct investment actually coming in. Yeah. Foreign direct investment has increased in the last quarter.
Yeah.
And then we've seen more bilateral trade happening with France and China and the rest of us. We will see any shortage of this because money is coming in. And
no, I don't agree with you. See, the second quarter trade finance figures showed this, that there was a trade surplus of about $8 billion. That means we exported more than we imported in the second quarter. If that happens, naturally what should happen is your reserves should increase. The only reason why your reserves do not increase is because your invisible items, there was a net outflow of invisible items from the country. That is why your reserves, one, did not grow, and two, if anything, have declined.
What are these invisible items?
Invisible items are, that's part of the hot money, and then payments due. You see, you have payments and receipts. What we received was less than what we paid out in the second quarter. In the third quarter, it has even exacerbated. So, and that is what puts a pressure on the currency.
Okay.
The trade items, what we export and what we import, now even the exports, the oil theft and the bunkering, 100,000 barrels of oil is stolen every day. However, because 100,000 is stolen, we have to shut in some of the pipelines to repair the leaked pipes.
So the hot money that is going out now,
yes.
The foreign direct investment that we're having cannot plug what the hot money is.
No, there's foreign direct investment and there's portfolio investment. Foreign direct investment is when Shell comes to invest in offshore bonga and all of that. That money doesn't go out. But portfolio investment are those brokers who are sitting down in New York and saying that, oh look, I think I like Lagos and I like the interest rates there. I put in $50 million into Lagos. Those guys are the slightest sign of any heightened risk will say, sell my money and get it out. And they don't want to hear anything. And those guys are very sensitive, right? So we must have that distinction between what we call portfolio investment, which is hot and volatile, and foreign direct investment, which is constant and stays there for a long period.
Now, there's a projected forecast of growth for 6.9% for this year. Now, with this latest development, can this be achieved?
I think you can achieve it. You can, and there's no question about that. But what is 6.9%? Let me put it in context. 6.9% is 0.1% or at least 0.5% lower than our 5-year average. We're growing at about 7.4, 7.5. So 6.9%, thank you very much. 6.9%, our potential GDP growth rate is actually about 11.9%. Therefore, you have your potential GDP is 5% more than your real GDP growth, which means that there are constraints to growth. What do? You begin to eliminate those constraints. Can those constraints be removed instantaneously? No. You've got to start working towards it. What's the plan? I'm not too sure what the plan is.
Well, at least in the medium to long term, we should see that.
Oh, no, in the medium to long term, the Nigerian growth story is intact. As a matter of fact, by the time the power reform starts to generate some outcomes, maybe in 2 years from today, that itself will throw 3% or so additional growth and increase the people's income and all of that. However, the fear is that between now and then, what happens to the price of oil and what do you do with the revenues you've been getting? What has happened is that the revenues that we have been getting have been suboptimally used. There's been a lot of waste, a lot of leakage. Now, if the waste and leakage can be managed properly and therefore you have an inward-looking, focused, productive economic program, then you will see that added to the oil revenue and gas revenue will make Nigeria a stellar nation amongst the African or in the world.
But we know that most Nigerians are actually looking for some sort of relief at this particular point in time, and they hope for that relief to come, even if it's a little bit of it in the short term, before we start looking at the bigger picture, that's the medium to the long term. And how soon are they going to start seeing all of that?
I don't know whether, you see, relief has to be deserved. You see, you have an unproductive workforce, right? You have low investment, low capital formation. So there's work to be done. And therefore, I can understand the pressure. That's why the misery index is that high. And the investments that you're talking about, investments in telecoms, investment in oil and gas, do not employ people. The investment that will employ people, because what you need is a people-intensive investment at a small and medium-scale enterprise level. Therefore, the banking system, the government spending and all of that has to be focused at the middle of the pyramid.
But that's what we're seeing a lot of, happening these days. We've seen the central bank taking a very strong stance on trying to help the MSMEs to grow. Seed money has actually been given to them. We've seen also drives in a drive in the agricultural sector and some other key sectors. So,
no, but you see, this what you are doing, you are dealing in silos. If there are no linkages, if the man who is growing maize cannot sell it to somebody who is going to start making conflicts, and the conflicts man does not order somebody to package the things and then a transporter to take it all the way through to the end-to-end analysis. If that doesn't happen, all you're going to have is pockets and silos of excellence with no integration. The linkages and the multiplier effect is because of the linkages. So there are structural shifts in this economy that are required. And, coming back to the MPC again, the MPC deals with short-term measures. The monetary policy is about stability, while growth is a function of the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Economic Planning, Ministry of Investment, where they now attract investors and create an environment for growth, the type of growth and type of investment that employs people that will actually have a value chain that will make small-scale and medium enterprises viable. That there has to be a plan. Corporate initiatives and high rhetoric doesn't do it. We've been talking about it for the past 53 years in Nigeria. Sorry, we're getting nowhere with it.
Well, we know that one of the reasons why the CBN has taken the stance is the fact that our inflation rate is actually now at a single-digit level.
Yeah.
Is this single-digit inflation rate a fluke, or is it sustainable?
No, it is sustainable. First and foremost, the Central Bank of Nigeria was not alone. Ghana, South Africa, Uganda, and I think Kenya, all of them maintained their interest rates at where they are. So the struggle against inflation is there will always be inflation, but we have what we call a natural rate of inflation. And this thing about single-digit inflation, single-digit means anywhere from 0 to 9.9. That's nothing. If you have to have a target and say the inflation in Nigeria will not be more than 5% or not more than 8%. So let us say, for example, we say double-digit. Are you going to accept double-digit as anywhere between 10 and 99? So it's mentally lazy to start setting a target of saying that I'm going to be among the top 50% in my class. If you want a target, set a target that you're going to be either first, second, or third, or something like that. Let us know where we are.
Now, going forward, what are we likely to see at the markets and the economy in general?
I think that you're going to see this quarter, you're going to see pressure on oil prices. The central bank is going to try as much as possible to defend the currency. I think that pressure will not let off. The discussion as to what is the true and fair value of the currency, what we call the real equilibrium exchange rate, will be a discussion that will take place within the central bank. But central banks do not discuss their strategies on the pages of newspapers, and I expect them to do that because they are responsible people. They'll discuss that and decide whether it makes sense in the short run or even in the medium term to maintain the currency value and that band which they've said. Apart from that, they will continue to monitor the interest rates and to see that certain things happen. But one major development as from Wednesday next week, the six states that are going to do the cashless economy, in addition to Lagos, are going to kick off. So you're going to have that significant development is that you're going to improve the payment and settlement system, increase the velocity of circulation, and increase the transaction flow. That is a major development. That happens on the 2nd of October, and then to be followed at the end of the year with the rest of the country, I hope. If that happens, it changes the payment system, it changes the banking structure, changes the charges program, and also makes agriculture and the other areas. So that's what we call institutional development rather than just physical infrastructure. That is institutional infrastructure being built. And that, I think, managing money supply, managing inflation, and revolutionizing the payment system will be the greatest achievement of this central bank than any other thing that has already been discussed. People talk about reform of the central bank mainly in the context of regulating the banks, but I think that's even mundane. The real achievement of the central bank is that it has been able to keep inflation low, it's been able to revolutionize the payment system, and has been able to defend the currency within a reasonable framework.
Well, thank you so much, Bismarck, for sharing your thoughts with us on the program today.
Thank you.
Well, I've been speaking with the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company Limited, Bismarck Rwani, and we've been looking at how the markets are actually going to be affected with the latest stance of the CBN's Monetary Policy Committee. Well, we know that they left all their rates unchanged. The monetary policy rate is unchanged at 12% for the 12th consecutive time. There was no shift in the cash reserve requirement on public sector deposits, which was increased to 50%, and every other corridor on most of other rates were actually left also unchanged. But that's the program for today. Thank you so much for being a part of it. I'm Harriet Agbenyi.